The Trump story so consumed national media that I think a lot of folks didn't realize what was actually happening in local news at the same time. How has local news evolved through the Trump years?
It's not going well, Emily. Frankly, local news is in crisis. And it's not because people don't want local news. In fact, people really do want local news. But the rise of the internet has meant that the business model of local news has been completely disrupted as advertising, which was the primary source of revenue for local news, has moved online. And what that means is that throughout our country, papers have closed. At the beginning of 2020, there were 1,800 communities that had had a local paper in 2004 and did not in the beginning of 2020. And that has only accelerated during COVID-19. And, it can be easy from afar to just say, like, this is the normal rise and fall of an industry. But in fact, the implications are really dire. Communities across our country have no idea what's going on in their communities. And the data shows it has real implications on our political culture. So when a local newspaper goes away, we find that voter participation drops. People are less likely to go vote because they don't know about who the candidates are, what the issues are. Government waste increases. Reporters are not showing up and holding government lawmakers accountable. And that means government waste increases. And really importantly, polarization increases. What the data has shown that when a local newspaper goes away, voting patterns become much more polarized.
Now, part of the problem, Sarah Beth, is that this is all happening also as social media has become even more powerful. So the less local news, the more local fake news, the more local fake news you're seeing in your social media feeds. What are some real world consequences of this that you've seen across the country?
Yeah, Emily, I mean, you've talked about disinformation. Disinformation is really the weeds that are growing up in the empty lot that has been left by the decline of local news. I mean, we saw on January 6th the real implications of the spread of disinformation. The people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, they were operating in an entirely different reality than those of us who watched those images in horror. And so then the question you have to ask is, how do you begin to build back a shared reality? And sadly, it's not as easy as just saying to folks that are really consumed by misinformation, here are the facts, believe the facts. In fact, what we need to do is really build back trust in the media. And that is going to happen in local communities. The data shows people are far more likely to trust their local news. And frankly, it makes sense. Humans build trust through relationships. And with your local news, you feel you have a relationship. You may know a local reporter, or you know the stories they're writing about. You can judge whether or not they're factual and accurate because you patron that business or that store. You send your kids to that school system.
So what exactly is the American Journalism Project then trying to do? I mean, these organizations rely on funding. I mean, is it down to the generosity of a few wealthy benefactors, or can they actually create sustainable business models?
Yeah, for all the doom and gloom I've just gone through, there's actually some really, really promising new generation of news organizations that are finding a new business model. Many of them are nonprofit business models. They are powering their newsroom, supporting their newsroom through philanthropy, through small dollar reader revenue, yes, through some advertising revenue, through events. We're investing in these new generation of newsrooms and helping them build the revenue capacity to support the journalism. We are seeing these new news organizations across the country, from Vermont to Wyoming to Mississippi. And I've also been really heartened to see that more and more philanthropists are recognizing this is really, really important. It's not just important to our information ecosystem. It's not just important to our democracy, but frankly, it's important to all the other issues that philanthropists care about. I mean, if you care about education, you want to make sure that there are reporters showing up at school board meetings and showing up at charter school board meetings. Or if you care about the environment, you want to make sure that there are reporters holding business accountable. looking at carbon emissions. So I'm actually really heartened by this new generation of newsrooms and by the increased philanthropic energy into this really central issue.